Hey everybody, welcome back to the VIBE Edu Podcast. I'm here with my friends Kim Gameroz, Joshua Stamper, and Mitch Weathers. And we are talking today on episode 10, number 2 in the series, about the education system. We defined the system last time, and I always call it the educational industrial complex. I stole that. It's not my original work. And so today, though, we're going to talk about change. So we spent a lot of time last episode talking about the things that we don't like with the system. Grading came up, behavioral management systems came up. A number of things will continue to come up. In fact, we're going to talk about ed prep programs in the next episode. But this episode, we want to talk about change management, how teachers and school leaders can change the system from the inside out. Not necessarily the pressures from policy or top-down management, but really what we can do in the system as leaders, as teachers, to make some changes. So I'm all ears, and I'm ready to hear from my team today.
You know what, Josh, I want you to talk first because I love when you talk about how you did create change on your campus when teachers started doing things and then they came together and talked about things. Like, I love it when you talk about that. And I've told you before, like when you start talking about something that I'm like digging, I could like literally just sit there, like eat it with the spoon. That's what I want you to talk about. Cause it's true. Like, you created change across your campus.
Yeah, and it wasn't done overnight, for one. And two, it was something that I learned through experience. As a young leader, you don't really realize that a top-down initiative typically is really hard to move. It's like moving mountains. And so there's a lot of obviously experiences and beliefs and biases that you have to kind of work through. And so for me, what I eventually learned a couple years in was like, what if we just did it as a grassroots movement? And for me, I did a relationship action team, specifically with student discipline, because what we were seeing with data and everything else was showing that it was increasing, not decreasing. So why are we continuously doing, and this is to TJ's point, right? The traditional model of, this is always what we've done, and that was the mindset. And because we've done it this way, this is how I experienced it as a student, then we'll just continue the practice. And for me, I hated that. I wanted to push back. I wanted to create some type of model that was going to teach students the correct behavior, still give them a consequence, keep them accountable, but not just put them in a room or kick them out into the community for a lot of different reasons. So the way that I did it, specifically to what Kim was talking about, was a relationship action team. It was a group of people, of like-minded folks that just wanted to create change. We didn't know what it looked like. We just wanted to learn together. Not that any of us had the answers. And that's the other thing. I didn't want to come up and be like, I'm going to be on a stage. I got all the answers, do what I say. When I say it, it was more about me being a part of that community just as much as them, and having their input, bringing things to the table. And so specifically with that relationship action team, it was like, have an open mind when you come in. Keep all your biases, all your experiences and things at the door. Second thing is, whatever is brought to the table, make sure you actually try to implement it. If it works, keep it. And then the last thing is, if it works, then share it out and invite people into the group. And by having that model, which doesn't sound like anything crazy, we started with 7 people, which was myself, a counselor, a 504 coordinator, some teachers, to then almost half the staff by the end of the year. And this started at mid-year. So it wasn't even a full calendar year with the school. It was just half a year of really building that up. And what was happening was that, for me to say it versus a peer, there's a different dynamic. So, and we've talked about that before, is like when you come into a room, you are stamped as the leader, you are the boss, you are the manager, whatever the title you want associated with that. And for me to say like anything, unfortunately, a lot of people take that as it's a mandate. I have to do it now because he has mentioned it or he's brought it up in conversation, versus this, it's just, equal, hopefully it's viewed that way. And then when a peer says, hey, I tried the strategy, it worked. Most often people try the strategy themselves and saw a lot of results through that. So I think with that model, it's just, again, different than what typically happens when there's an initiative on a campus or in a district, where it's coming from higher up and it's supposed to trickle down to everybody complying and making sure that they're doing the practices.
Yeah. I mean, as an individual teacher years ago, I just started posting things on Instagram. That's really where it started, right? And like on my personal Facebook group, like my personal Facebook page, before there was even a group or anything. And I remember shortly after just having like random teachers that I'd never, ever met before across my entire school district would email me saying like, can I hop into your classroom after school and come talk to you? Can I come pick your brain? And then it ended up being groups of teachers from different schools that would come, or they'd bring their principal or their instructional coach. And here I am just a teacher. That's all I was. And I hate saying just a teacher, but really that's how I felt. I was just doing good stuff in my classroom, and it was actually supporting me and supporting kids. And I wasn't burnt out all the time. And I think just sometimes we feel like the only way we're going to create change is if there's like a slide deck and if there is a podium or if there is a schedule time. But like that was so organic and so lovely. And then it really did create change and movement across that school district. I mean, fast forward, that's when I went and created a position to then create real change, systematic change. But it started off slow, like you were saying, just grassroots, just easy. And I think people need to know that. It doesn't have to, you don't have to come in August, right, with that exact plan of what I'm going to do. Like it can be so natural. And I think that's important for everybody listening to know.
Curious if for Josh and TJ, your thoughts as school leaders. It's what I'm hearing and have experienced as well. It's just the opportunity to galvanize people. Like we are, like Josh, your rat group, right? That you met and but it was the opportunity. It was optional, but if it's resonating with you, then come here. You know, I think of that even, you know, you guys know I do every like 2 months, I'll do a free class. I just throw it out there and anybody wants to come, but it's that opportunity, you know, and I was telling Josh, 250 people RSVP'd for the one yesterday. I don't know them, but it's that galvanizing, you know, and I think as a school leader, the what you were saying, TJ, at the beginning, like inside out, Kim, inside out. But if you have just these does that make sense? Like creating something that allows for the gathering to happen, then it is going to be pretty organic. Even if you're considering strategies and tools from the outside, but there's something organic about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, listen, I've made a lot of mistakes with this. I mean, I actually think I've learned more from my mistakes than I did from doing things the right way, especially the first time. But I think one is that it needs to be philosophical. So I do believe a little bit in like balanced leadership. From some stuff does have to be top down, and it is what it is. This is what we're doing, and everybody's got to do it because that's what's best for kids, and that's what the initiative is. Or even it's a state mandate. We're going to do it. And I also think there needs to be the organic piece as well. And what we need to do from the philosophical standpoint is decide which ones of these things do we just need everybody to do, and which ones of these things can go a little bit slower and have test cases and get more people on board like Josh was describing. In that case, I would even adopt an additional philosophy. I just put a LinkedIn post up that started with buy-in is a joke, because I really do believe the concept of buy-in is a joke. It's fake news. If we're going to try to get everybody to believe something before we do it, it's never going to happen. And so what do you then do? Well, Malcolm Gladwell has the philosophy of the magic third, which I think is really cool. I also I always recommend the video of the shirtless dancing guy. Now, if you're on a school computer, do not Google shirtless dancing guy. You have to Google leadership lessons from a shirtless dancing guy. And there's a guy dancing on a hill, and eventually there's a second follower and a third follower, and eventually everybody starts dancing. If you dug into that, you'd find out that people ridiculed that first dancer for a really long time. There's more videos of people ridiculing that guy before the first dancer showed up. But to Josh's point, once we get the second, the third, the fourth dancer, and then the magic third kicks in, everybody's going to be willing to do it. So we just have to decide. this I'm going to mandate, these things I'm going to get groups of people to go first. And the first followers are critical. So who are the people in your school? If you're a school assistant principal or principal, to Mitch's question, who are the people in your school who you can identify who have the skills and the willingness to go first and do something that might not work? And I think that's cool and fun, quite frankly.
So you guys, we just started working with a school up in Northern California. Mitch, it's near you. And by the way, when we're out there in a month, we're having dinner together, just saying. But we are working with this school, and it's always interesting when you work with a new school, a new administrator, kind of always like, oh gosh, right? And so like walking them through, TJ, like what you were saying, choosing the people who are gonna go first. That's like, it's like, do you have 2? Do you have 5? And this principal, she has 10. And I was like, I don't know about this. And I told my team too, I was like, 10? Like, this seems like a lot, guys. And so we just had our first Zoom with them last night. And my mentor teachers that are going to be mentoring this crew throughout the year, they got on Voxer with me last night, you guys. And they were like, Kim, this is the most incredible group of 10 educators. Their mindset is exactly where it needs to be. And it's funny because, funny, not funny, I feel like constantly I get asked by administrators, how can I change their mindset? Right? How do I do that, Kim? How do I get them to have the buy-in or to come this way, whatever this initiative is or whatever? And that's why I wrote the book, Becoming the Bison. It's a mindset book above all else. It's like you can disguise it as social emotional learning, but truly it's a mindset book because I mean, it comes from the adults, right? I like how you said, like, it's fake news. Buy-in is fake news. Like, you have to experience it yourself in order to come forward. So anyways, it's rare, I think, when we're talking about teachers who are open and who are willing and who are curious, or administrators who are willing to drop the ego. Like, it's rare, but when it's done the right way, it just feels so good. And so anyways, just thinking about them as we're talking, like, yeah, that's the way to do it.
I think there has to be a level of acceptance too, or permission. I think some folks see, for instance, if I'm sticking with the discipline example, is like, well, I have a discipline matrix and that's from the district and I need to make sure I follow it to the T, versus saying, there's other ways that you can do it. And you have the autonomy to make that decision for what's best for the kids. And of course, you're going to have my support, or if you need me as someone that's a side mate to help you through that process, to think through it, like that's okay. That we're able to do that on that campus. And depending on, how other administrators they worked with was prior to them, or again, as a student, maybe some of their own experiences, sometimes they have this mindset, to your point, Kim, that this is the only way to do it. And this is what we have to do. And we have a lot of folks that are compliant as far as, things that they know they have to abide by. But at the same time, I always like to have this conversation. And unfortunately, as a parent, sometimes I've had to do this with other leaders too, is like, you do have discretion. You have more power than you realize within the system or the procedures or the matrix that you're supposed to be abiding by. So like, I'm giving you permission to do what's right for the child, for the school community, for the teacher, for the parents, whatever. So I think that mindset piece too, I think there is a component of people just thinking that they have to comply by a certain standard.
I was thinking also about, this happened last night. I was with a group. We were talking about their behavior matrix. So we're talking about PBIS, that kind of stuff like popped up. And one teacher, she was like, well, we're talking about how to teach into lagging skills. That's what we were talking about, really, right? Lagging skills in kids. Doesn't matter if they're in TK all the way through high school, kids have lagging skills, adults have lagging skills. And she was like, well, I have to teach, our 3 things across our campus. They're be kind, be safe, be responsible, for example, right? And she was like, well, I have to use that language. I have to say that. I was like, but what does that look like? What does that sound like? And like, you just saying that over and over and over again to a kid is not making any sense. We need to be explicit, right? What is expected? What does it look like when it's unexpected? Why? The why behind all of that. And how do we do that so it's effective? Those types of conversations were coming up, and I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, we can break through the be kind, the be safe, be responsible. Like there's more to it here, guys. There's more here. And again, that's a mindset thing. It's hard to like break through that when it's so ingrained in the system. Like this is just the way it is.
Kim, I couldn't help but think about all the times I hear people say to kids, especially little kids, use your words. And especially like when a kid is messing up and somebody's like, use your words. I'm like, if that kid had words, he would have cussed us out. Maybe the problem is words. Let's teach some words.
Yes.
Or calm down. And like, if they knew how to calm down, they would do those strategies to calm down. It's like, that's not helping the situation.
Agreed. That's why teaching the strategy, practicing the strategy, and then calling out the strategy when it's needed, that's a much better system. I'll also just point this out. People either behave their way into believing or they believe their way into behaving. And typically humans are much better at behaving their way into believing versus believing their way into behaving. So it's
Tell me more.
It's better for us to, in change practices, it's better for us to get people to try something than to believe in it.
Yeah. I think a perfect analogy is running, right? Mm-hmm. You don't love running. You don't learn to love. You fall in love with running if you behave like you run. But to think like, I'm going to become a runner, and you go out and spend $500 on gear and shoes and your fancy watch, and you go out and you're like, this sucks. But after a month, you're kind of like, oh, is that what you're saying, TJ?
Yeah. So some of it is identity. That's identity creation and habit formation. I think you're right about that. But what I was referring to in the change leadership stuff and what Kim had with those 10 teachers is, let's just get somebody to do this differently. Wolf, we're and the point about permission. We're giving you permission to mess this up, try it, work out the kinks. You're the 10. We have 60 people over here, but you're the 10. And so we're giving you permission to do it first. And then they might say, 5 of the 10 might say, well, I don't know if this is going to work. And that's when you say, none of us know if this is going to work because we haven't done it before. And so you have to behave your way into believing. It's way harder in my experience to just get everybody to believe that the change we're going to make is going to work and that we'll all change our behaviors based on beliefs. So people do believe their way into behaving sometimes, but most of the time they behave their way into believing, and it takes practice. On your 10th run, you're a runner, not because you bought the gear.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, Mitch, it's kind of like, I love that Hawaiian concept that you say when you're saying like the knowing is in the doing, right? Tell me, what's that again? Say it again.
Makahana kaike.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah.
Me too. I think there's something to mash up what a lot of what I'm hearing with the 10, Kim, or any like for an organized binder pilot. If we're working with a school, it's a pilot, and it's that same thing. Like, let's do this.
Yeah.
Who's going to opt in, or who, but then it also, there has to be, the expression I used, and I've never been a school leader, but chaired my department forever. And I would tell my department, like, there's things that will opt in. And then there's other things where I'm the benevolent dictator. And this is just what we're doing because it's good for kids, or it's whatever it might be. So even in that pilot, it's like, okay, what are the things, if you're opting in, it's opt in, right? This is a pilot. We're testing this out. But if you opt in, here are the things that you are agreeing to implement with fidelity or to try with, right? I think it's got to be both, or then you're really not testing out the thing that we're piloting, right?
Yeah. I mean, even today, as soon as I create, you guys know I use Voxer for all of my groups and group coaching. So it's literally in their back pocket all the time, and creating a community, a sense of community even stronger. But today they got to hear my voice as soon as I created, like they met over Zoom yesterday. I'm creating that group today, and we're going to start talking now. And so what I said was, okay, It's expected too, right? I want to hear your voice in here. You're going to hear for next steps on Monday. You're going to get this intention from one of my mentor teachers. And then you guys got to post stuff, like whether it's a picture or it's a text or it's your voice. I want to see it, like the good, the bad, the ugly, because then we can give you your next steps, right? There's coaching involved in everything, but yeah, being explicit about what's expected. Yeah, you've opted in and now here's what's expected of you. I think that's, again, the only way that change is really going to happen.
Right. And that's true of, bring it back to the classroom. As soon as we make assumptions about what either students can do or know, you often can just be shooting yourself in the foot. But if we check our assumptions, I like to think of assumptions, and it may be true of change leadership too, like assumptions is like a 4-letter word, like if we can check everything. Now the assumption might be right. Oh yeah, I did mandate a binder and you understood this. I'm not going to go into what we talked about pre-show. But yeah, just trying to get clear. I remember, my time in the classroom, just really for years, just because you don't realize how easy it is to make assumptions. It's like, of course, you know what it means to be on time. You're a freshman in high school. Well, why don't I just not make that assumption? And I clearly, explicitly model for you without words what it looks like to be on time. And then I ask you, turn to your neighbor and say, what's it mean to be on time in Mr. Weathers' biology class? And then the whole place erupts in conversation. And then I call in a few kids and it's like, clarity. Okay, let's move on. But I had to unpack my own assumptions.
What grade are you talking about?
Any grade. But for me, ninth grade. But any grade. Yeah, I was just referring to my own experience.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing. That is the biggest thing, is that teachers, adults sometimes assume that even in ninth grade, even in high school, kids understand what it's supposed to look like, right? What's expected to be on time. I mean, yeah. So like what you were saying, I was like, yeah, they need this always. They need this always explicitly taught.
But on time is also different for teacher to teacher to teacher also in the secondary world. So that also needs to be communicated.
Sure should be, but that's just my
well, that's a different. I know. I almost opened Pandora's box.
Collective teacher efficacy is a real thing. But
working memory is calories, and
don't get me started. We're talking about change.
I know. I was trying to get you.
But the fidelity part, I think the fidelity part is important on both sides, whether it's a top-down mandate, fidelity, and whether or not you're opting in, fidelity.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying too is we really need to define what this looks like from a fidelity standpoint for the teachers, whether they opt in or it's a mandate. I will say I even talked about what it looks like to be on time at a faculty meeting.
Yep.
Because they started for me, I remember 2:30, and my first couple, I'm like, what's going on here? People are getting here at 2:40. They're not sitting, they're standing in the back. And I'm like, I don't totally understand. So I asked a couple questions to some people, and it was part of the culture. So I just said, hey, on time is 2:30 and it's seated. And guess what? Like 99% of the people complied with that right away.
Yeah.
They just didn't know. And so
I mean, even last night, I mean, every Zoom that I do, especially with new groups of schools, districts, whatever it is, even though we're on Zoom, like I want to see your face because I need to have conversations with you. I need to get to know you so I can help support you. Right. Your screen off it's not going to support you. It's not going to support me. I want to see this conversation going somewhere. And it's okay if you're driving. If you're driving, you can have it off. But then when you get to where you need to be, I'd love to see your face again. And when I say hop in the chat, I also want you to hop in the chat and I want you to write something. But it's funny, like we need to be explicit, even with adults, right? And I think we can't assume. I mean, my father, it's like ingrained in my brain. Kimberly, never assume. Like that has been ingrained in me forever. You cannot, even if it's with adults that you're talking to.
So with that too, it kind of reminds me, Mitch, of what you were talking about with your running analogy of the Atomic Habits book, where it's talking about goals and associated with identity. And I think as leaders too, yes, we need to be explicit with our goals, but I do think there needs to be an identity piece to that so that it hits home a little bit different as far as that mindset. And I think if we're changing or trying to make change as far as how they believe, or similar to what TJ is talking about as far as like making that first step to actually do it, and maybe they believe later, is to have that identity piece, right? Like a runner doesn't do the goal of running unless they first say, I am a runner, and as a runner, I'm going to do X or Y or Z. If you just say, every day I'm going to run for a mile, most likely you're not going to hit that goal, and it's going to go to the wayside. And so, there's a lot of other steps in there as far as making it easy and some other things that he talks about in that book. But the reason it's so popular is because I actually do think it creates change personally, but I think you can take that as a leader and implement that as a campus-wide initiative too, as far as not only being explicit with our goals like TJ was talking about, but then also like having an identity piece wrapped around it.
Like, I also think, as long as we're on the topic, I think that's why the changes in education fail. Because, for all the reasons that we discussed, nobody goes first. There's not a group of 10 people who opt in. Everybody does it differently and not with fidelity. So if we're all doing it differently, we're not all making the change, right? Yeah. So these are all reasons why it fails. That's why I think change management, what we're talking about on the show, to battle the system is super important for anybody listening, because we've got to have a strategy here. We can't just go into this thinking, well, I'm going to get everybody eventually to do this, or I'm going to get everybody eventually to believe in this. Neither one of those are going to totally work. We have to take the first steps. And I'm glad you call out the James Clear book. That's an excellent book. And I'll just add to it, BJ Fogg has a book called Tiny Habits. So Atomic Habits, Tiny Habits. Habit creation is critical, but it's a mindset shift, which we've already, I think Kim mentioned earlier.
So often change is really more about culture. And if you're going to talk culture, you do have to talk identity, right? So it's all kind of swirled together, whatever that strategy might be, which is really kind of the art of leadership in some ways, because it can't just be the strategy or the program and fidelity, right? This thing has been proven to work. Look, it's research backed. That's it, right? And that's all good stuff. But then how do we start to weave in the conversations around identity and culture to make a change, whether it be at the classroom level or school or district wide, right?
You know where it's going to come from. My book, Becoming the Bison. Because everything you guys are saying, it's so crazy. Because it does start with you, your identity. It's who you need to become, right? And it's the action that you need to take, and you can't do it alone. You need your people, you need your opt-ins, and that is the book. And everything we're saying, I was like, wow, you mean I'm a change maker? Honestly, in my brain, I'm like, I think I'm a change maker as we're talking. But yeah, you have to, it is the identity piece. It is the action piece. It is, I can't do this alone piece, and find your people piece. All of that is how we do this. So anyways, Josh, do you want to wrap it up for us?
I do. Because I was looking at the time and we're getting there. So for everyone that's listening, make sure that you are subscribing. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Spotify, Apple, whatever you are, it is incredible to see the growth of this podcast and show, both obviously in the video formats and in the audio format. So we just appreciate you not only listening, but we'd love for you to also rate, review the podcast, and share it out with a friend or a colleague, because this is what we're hoping for, is this breaking of a barrier and also creating change. So if you need assistance, of course, our links are in the show notes. I'm also going to add, the books that we talked about today as far as links, but I'm also going to add that YouTube video that TJ was talking about. I remember watching that for the first time. It's super impactful. Make sure you're sharing out these resources to others too, because it's going to make a difference regardless of what your title is in education. And of course, with that, I want to say, I hope everyone has a wonderful week. It's great to see all three of you. And I cannot wait for next week as we continue talking about the educational system.